Hi, I'm Bob Knoth, and on this, the kickoff episode of the 4th season of the Camp Chaos Chronicles, I'm going to answer two questions that a lot of people have been asking. Where have you been, and what have you been up to? It hasn't all been fun and games. So what have I been up to? Well, not a whole lot of anything. Here's why. Last summer, I was feeling really good. I was putting a roof on the small building on the place that I was going to use as the JaguarPreserve.com warehouse annex to get the stuff out of the shop here that I haven't actually touched in 5 years but still have some value. And I noticed that during the installation of the roof that my urine was turning kind of a funny color. Going online, I learned that that could be due to dehydration, and so I kept myself hydrated and it went away. But then about a month later it came back and it started to get pretty bad. So I went in for my annual physical, which I have done every 3 to 5 years whether I need to or not. And they did some testing. They said that there was a minute amount of blood in my urine. So I went in for a CAT scan, and yep, there's something there. Lump of something about that big around. So went into the urology department of my local healthcare provider and did a cystoscopy, and they said, yep, that's cancer. So to make a long story short, I've got bladder cancer, still dealing with it. The first operation was done October 31st, and the third one, where I eventually went down to the Mayo Clinic because I had some serious questions about what's been going on with my local provider. So this is the middle of May, and during the course of that time, there's been about 20 weeks where I was restricted to 5 pounds lifting limitation. 5 pounds. About the smallest bolt on a Jaguar V12, it takes about 10 foot-pounds of torque. So what that means is that I haven't been doing a whole lot of anything for the past several months. And I must say that my clients, I've got some engine clients who have been very understanding, although they want to get their engines. So the good news is that I am feeling really good right now. That's a combination of getting back to work, and also I'm on kind of an extreme diet right now, which has yielded some pretty good results, I think, in a lot of respects. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in terms of my health issue. I've got another YouTube channel that I've started for family and friends and people who are interested in terms of what's going on there. And the YouTube channel is called Beyond the Chaos. And I'll put a link to that YouTube channel in the description below. So what are we doing this year? Well, let's take a look. Due to the fact that I haven't been able to be particularly active for the past several months, there are a number of projects here that I've got in process that have to do with clients. And the first order of business is going to be to get those projects done as quickly as possible before I move on to any projects on my own personal cars, like the track car here, for example. It's a vehicle that I've wanted to get on track again for the past 3 years, but for a number of reasons haven't been able to do that. So what I've been doing over the past several months is acquiring video clips on the subject of Jaguar V12 engine inspections and renovations and so forth, trying to give you the clearest view possible of what it takes to overhaul these engines, with an eye toward you gaining the confidence necessary to maybe do it yourself. And if you don't, you know somebody who can. So that's sort of the point. Let's take a look at these engines that are in process, most of which are for clients, but I got a couple of my own that are just about finished that we'll be taking a look at as well. Well, the first one here is kind of interesting because this is the one that I was in process of rebuilding for the only XJS street car that I had at the time, sort of my daily driver. And this was actually started in the wintertime before I had the shop set up to work in the winter. I had no reliable heat in the place. The kitchen just seemed sort of like the natural place to start. But then I decided to get the track car going, and that took a lot of my time and effort, and money at that point, and this one just sort of got slid by the wayside. Taking 10 years to rebuild an engine is never a good idea, particularly in light of the fact that I know a lot more now than I did then, owing to my experience on the XJS track car. And I think this is going to be a pretty good engine, except for the fact that it has been in process for 10 years. And but we're getting ready to get this thing going. I think it'll be fine. The plan for this one is to go into the Survivor 85 or XJS. It's a 1985 model, and that's the car that I'm going to probably keep, and that'll be my really nice Sunday going to meeting car, because it is, if you look at that video, the second year, I'll provide a link for it in the description down below. That's a pretty darn nice looking car. This one is for a client. It's out of a junkyard. It's a 1991 that the owner of the car wanted to enjoy his car while he's having this one rebuilt, so he bought a spare motor out of a salvage lot, and it's a pretty good engine. It's got the normal. It's going to take some cleanup on the studs and other aspects of it, get it looking decent. This is an engine that I took in and had it hot tanked, so it's pretty clean in the inside. I'm going to do a little bit of hand cleaning on it before we actually start doing the assembly. Not much, probably take a couple of hours. And this one is a little bit of an issue. If you look at it, it's pretty corroded. This is for a client who bought this as a second engine. If I needed any parts off of it for the real engine that's out of his car, I could use this one, but the problem is that he had the engine being worked on by a shop in the Ohio area someplace, and they had an issue taking the heads off to the point where they mushroomed the end of the studs, which means you got to cut all the studs, and then you got to replace all the studs. It's just a nightmare. So this one is one that I took apart in the Hell Week videos last year. But the problem is you got all this popcorn corrosion on the outside. The inside looks pretty good. Studs, they're all like this, pretty heavily stained. A little bit pitted, but these studs are incredibly, incredibly tough. And it'll be fine. If you remember from the first season, there was the $100 Jaguar V12 overhaul challenge. Well, you need to go back and take a look at that video and see how that turned out. And it wasn't good for reasons that had really nothing to do with the rebuild, but it had everything to do with the car. Now, when I say $100 rebuild, that's $100 out of pocket. I had a lot of used stuff, like from my XJS track car. The engine came apart a few times since I've had it running, just to inspect things, to see how lubrication mods that I've been doing were working. And so, the bearings and the rings were all pretty good. So I'd save them for a project like this. And this particular one is going to be the $500 overhaul. I had to buy a set of cylinder head gaskets, but this is the one that's going in Old Tex, because I want to take that engine out. If you remember from last season, I did some experimentation regarding the overheating issue, and I need to dig into that engine and find out what's going on there, because we never really solved it before things got cold and overheating was no longer an issue. Now, beyond all this stuff that I've got lined up here, I also have a 1973, I believe, E-Type V12 that I want to get started within the next month and get that out the door by the end of the year. But in addition to that, I've got a number of my own projects that I would like to work on. These are kind of optional. Got to get the client stuff taken care of first. First of all, we've got the Texas XJS. Old Tex, as many of you are familiar with from past seasons, is a car that I picked up down in northern Texas out of a backyard and got the thing running and taken it on a couple of road trips. A nice old car. I always liked stuff that I brought back from the edge of oblivion, and Tex is probably the best example of that. Put a $250 engine in it after sticking a set of used bearings in it, and it's been running great, except that gradually it began to overheat more and more and more as time went by. So I got an engine that I'm going to put in it, and I'm going to take that engine apart and find out what the heck the problem is with it. You'll notice that Old Tex is a little bit rough as far as paint is concerned, but us in the car culture refer to that as patina. Now, as you can see, it's got some issues here as far as interior is concerned. I got a couple of really nice seats, different color, but all it takes is re-dyeing that I need to replace it with. I've also got a dash pad to replace the cracked one, which you can see right there. And I've got some other nice interior pieces, although, you know, all it really takes is a good cleanup, and that's going to look pretty decent. Also, there's some IRS issues, a lot of rumbling from the back, and I've got at least one hub carrier that needs to be taken care of. And also, it's got a leaky heater core that when I got the dash out, I might as well deal with that. Air conditioning works, but there's some issues with the doors on it and controls that doesn't allow it to pump cold air out very well. So we need to take a look at that as well. So there's some issues here with this car, but it's probably my favorite project car at this point. Over here, we got my 1990 Jaguar XJS convertible. And this one mechanically is really good, although what I'd like to do is to renovate the fuel injection system like I've done on some of the other cars. It really makes a difference in terms of performance. And the obvious thing is right here, the Gorilla Top. So named because it's made out of Gorilla Tape for the most part. So not only do I have, what are you doing? Neighbors guinea fowl. They think they own the place, which they kind of do. But not only do I have to replace the top, which is not an easy job, I also have to fix the pump because it's not pumping. A couple winters ago, I came out and there was a big puddle of fluid right about there in front of the right rear wheel. So there's a leak in the system. Got to take care of that. But mechanically, it's really good. And I'd like to take a road trip with this summer. But again, it depends on how much work I get done. And I've got a bunch of other cars around here that I'd like to work on, like the track car. Wouldn't really take a whole lot of time to get the track car up and running, just to renovate the rear brakes and do a few other things. But at this point, got to take care of the customers, and only after that can I start looking at projects like this. Classy old car. So that's the wish list. Under the best of circumstances, that's what I hope to get done. Now, the fly in the ointment, of course, is if it's decided that we need to start cutting out body parts and replacing them or replumbing things or whatever, and I lose a couple months during the course of the summer, that of course changes everything. But you know what? I feel pretty good about where I am right now, and I feel that I've got some time between now and when anything serious has to happen, so I think I can take a good run at getting the client stuff together, so that if I do have to go under some pretty serious surgery, I can feel like I've got some time to recover. Now, if you like these kinds of videos, like, subscribe, maybe leave some comments down below so that we can know what we can do to do what we do better. And we'll see you the next time on Camp Chaos Chronicles.